to the history programme with me, Tony Brown, and with my co-functionary, Tom Delavan. And tonight we want to talk about, again, something else about tracing families and roots and how you go about it and all that kind of stuff. I'd like to welcome along tonight, all the way from Melbourne, Nick Reddan.
Canberra.
Welcome to the programme.
Canberra, Tony.
Yeah, what's it like out in Melbourne this morning?
Canberra.
Oh,
actually in Canberra.
Oh, I thought you were in Melbourne.
No.
But you have been to Melbourne the weekend, yeah?
Yeah. I watched a bit of the tennis last week or this week.
Tennis? What's the point in watching tennis? There's a silly net he keeps on getting in the way. Why don't they take away the net? Surely to be easier. What is the point?
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll let that for another day. But in Canberra, actually, talking of that, there's very little we hear about Canberra, really. We always hear about the obvious places like Perth, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, but you never hear much about Canberra. I think it's just because it was never old, was it, as such. It's new.
It's a new place. It's only 100 years old.
Yeah, but that's nothing really. Because I was in America a few years ago and they were on about, somebody said to me, why don't you go to Boston? There are buildings there and they're going back 150 years, nearly 200 years. And I said, come to Ireland and I'll show you some that are going back 800 years and 900 years. It depends on your views, doesn't it? But,
it does.
Canberra is a planned city.
It's a what city?
It is a planned city, yes.
Planned.
Planned city, yeah. Well, really, Melbourne was too, like in one sense. With Melbourne, with all its straight lines, I like to think it was based on Limerick anyway, with all the intersection streets. Is Canberra much the same, Nick, is it?
Lots of circles in Canberra.
Lots of... we don't have too many doors here. I said there'll be many car accidents if we too many roundabouts. Anyway, Nick, your main interest is in research. Is it?
Sure.
Yeah. In what sphere? Like, first of all, your own name, Reddan.
It comes from County Clare. Around my my great grandfather John Reddan came out in 1841 from Tulla in County Clare. He was a carpenter.
Yeah. And where did he go to in Australia?
He arrived in Sydney, but settled in Penrith, which is just a little bit west of Sydney, in the sort of foothills of the Blue Mountains.
Mm-hmm. And did he find work when he went first? Was he looking to get employment? He would have had, I suppose, as a carpenter.
Yeah, look, I think he did. He actually also got some land and started farming, but basically they became shop owners, and the family then owned some pubs in Penrith. But my great-grandfather did an apprenticeship in a big shop in Sydney, and then went to Maryborough and Bundaberg in Queensland, where he opened a department store, or what became a department store, which lasted about 100 years.
And when he went in 1840, did he go from his own free will, or was there a problem with he going there? Why?
He was an assisted migrant, so he was supported. He had to pay a small amount of money to get on the ship. He came with his wife and 2 children at that stage. And there was a scheme to get more young people and more women into the colony.
Yeah. And because, Tom, I'm sure you've come across that as regards the the shortage of women
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
was a problem.
Actually, I'm reading a book at the moment. I'm rereading it, The Kerry Girls by Kay Cable, and it's a very well written book about the Kerry women who were taken out to Australia from the workhouses, and they were taken out to really to increase the female population.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And she goes in and she has used family records from Australia of family, she gives stories of individual families that went out. And it's very interesting, to see how they thrived going from misery out to and it was a hard climate. I mean, it's very warm in Australia at the moment, so you can imagine people going from damp climate and cold out to a very hot climate, another extreme. But it's amazing how they thrived, the families, when they went there.
Yeah. Have you heard of that book, Nick?
So which one was it? Who?
Kerry Girls. It's by
Kerry Girls.
Yeah. Kerry Girls. I haven't heard of the Kerry Girls, but I know these schemes started with the Red Rover, which took girls from the workhouses in Cork mainly, and brought them out to New South Wales to try and rebalance the gender.
There's several books. Elizabeth Russian did a book on the women.
Yes.
There's several books. Trevor McLaughlin, was it, I think, or there's lots of studies done on it, But,
sure.
Yeah. But Don Reddan went in 1841, and did he keep up his trade? Did he ever go back to carpentry?
Look, I don't really know, because it's not sort of recorded anywhere, and I haven't got the sort of family law that tells me what he did, so to speak. Yeah.
It's a pity that. Well, I know that they didn't think anybody would be interested, but it's a pity some of the few of them did keep records of what they did, when they arrived, where they were going, what monies they got, did they like their employers? There are things I'd like to know about. Were the employers, were they pro-Irish or pro-British? The employers that they had. Be fascinating to read. I read an account of a priest, published, I think it's in one of the Mallow journals, and he kept a diary from the time he left Southampton. And it's fascinating to read all the ports they stopped at, and about the Northern Star, what's the star? The Southern Star, to watch the Southern Star in the sky. And it's very
Southern
interesting.
Cross, probably.
Yeah, but he had about arriving in Australia, to the parish that he was assigned to. I forget now where he arrived. I think it was Sydney anyway. But it's a pity to have more proper accounts like that, kept.
Sure.
Have you traced back to Tulla? Have you traced the family back to Tulla, Nick?
Not much more than, Tulla's Roman Catholic records only go back to about 1810, and there's lots of big gaps in them, which makes it really hard to get any further information. I'm still not sure of who his parents were. It's with anglicisation of names and things, it's a bit hard sometimes to find out.
It's a big problem. Tom's wife is from Melbourne, Nick, you know that?
Sorry?
Tom Denver's wife is from Melbourne.
Yeah.
Tom's wife.
Actually, my brother-in-law was travelling from Melbourne to Sydney the same day as you were, or to Canberra, so Melbourne to Canberra. He lives in Canberra. He's travelling. Yeah. They have a beautiful Parliament, new Parliament building in Canberra.
Yeah. Although it's not quite as new as that, because it was
an old and a new. Yeah.
But wasn't, obviously there must have been some kind of a settlement in Canberra, before they decided to put the Parliament there.
It was it was a planned city, because the basic idea was that that they didn't want to make Sydney or Melbourne the capital of Australia. So they said, well, we'll go halfway in between, sort of thing. They also said they wanted to be inland, be out of the range of shelling by naval ships. So we're an inland city, whereas that really isn't a consideration these days. They probably should have put it on the coast somewhere. And there's actually Canberra has the Australian Capital Territory has a little a port or an area on the sea, which is called at Jarvis Bay, which is supposed to be the port for Canberra, but it really doesn't do that function. They've just got a few people down at there who live in the Australian Capital Territory in a different part, isolated from the main part of the Capital Territory.
Well, can you explain how you got your records together? You know, the records, how you developed your record database. I mean, you were in pre probably internet, you know, as we know it today. Your database, how you gathered the information. Like, you have lots of references to newspapers and
yeah, I mean, with the newspapers, mostly I did those by looking at the microfilms of various newspapers which were in the National Library. Also had on my trips to Ireland, I looked at other ones which at that stage were not available anywhere else, and went to the National Library. Also had one time I was at the in Washington in the USA, and went to the Library of Congress and had a look at a little file of newspaper that they had on microfilm. So all over the place with those. With the Registry of Deeds stuff, I have lots of helpers that gather information as well. But when I started out, whenever I came to Ireland, I'd go to the Registry of Deeds and spend at least a couple of days in there extracting information. It's a fantastic resource, the Registry of Deeds.
But unfortunately,
sorry, Sam, go ahead.
No, a lot of the deeds have been destroyed, you know, in the fire.
No, deeds were never involved in the fire. The deeds, the Registry of Deeds was not affected by the Forecourts fire. It was actually somewhere else.
It's the Wills I'm thinking of. Sorry,
The wills, yes. There are, of course, quite a lot of wills in the Registry of Deeds, but the three books by Eustace and others have summaries of all of those.
That's on the web now. You know, that's on the internet.
Yes, yeah. You go to the Irish Manuscripts website. You can read those books at your leisure.
But you need a patience of Job, wouldn't you, reading some of this? So, and if you've bad handwriting, luckily most of them are very legible. But you'd have, you know, it's the patience really to be searching for things.
It's sort of funny. I mean, the very early volumes are very readable. Some of the ones in about the early 1800s, they look all right, but they're quite hard to read sometimes. It's it varies a bit. These people were paid as scribes, but readability wasn't one of the things they were paid on.
Yeah. It's just.
But then, if these are transcribed in by people, you want great supervision. Do you know that if who do you get to kind of type them out? In other words, you know, or even when they're going up on the internet, would you not need great supervision, because it's so easy to make a mistake in spellings, especially of name.
That's the way. I mean, at the moment in the website, it has the links to the images. So,
Oh yeah.
So if you find something which hasn't been transcribed properly, you can tell me and I'll correct it. It's
the same with the census. You know, the census records have links where you can report errors of spelling and that. It's the same.
Oh yeah, there's all. John Grenham did quite a bit of work to try and correct the census.
I don't know if they ever go back and look at them. I've said that lots of reports, but they don't seem to change. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Your own name, Nick, in Limerick. There aren't that many Reddans in Limerick now. Funnily enough, you would imagine that if there had been so many of them in a place like Tulla, that it would be more common in the city of Limerick. It's not really. I think, off the top of my head, I think there are only about 4 Reddan families in Limerick.
Yeah, probably be right. I mean, it is a fairly rare name.
Yeah.
So that's is part of that. But there were some families. There was a merchant in Limerick who was another branch of the Reddan family, and he features in the newspapers a bit in the early 1800s.
Can you recall a merchant of what? You know, what was his occupation? Can you remember?
Well, he was a merchant. I'm not sure what he sold, but cloth and things like that was part of his things, and he also had something about hides and that. So probably a general sort of merchant. Yeah.
Funny you should mention hides, though, because I knew a man in Limerick, Paddy Reddan, and he was a shoemaker. And really, Paddy only did he must be dead about 15 years, I'd say. And he was fairly old now at that stage. But he was a funny man. And he was in Elm Street, Tom, for years.
Yeah, I remember. Down
at the end of Elm Street there. And then he moved from that up to what we call the Paddocks, just off Edward Street. He did which is gone now. He did a little shop there. And he was one of the last tradesmen I know was a Redding, of the name Reddan. You know, and he was there. Then there was a pub, Dan Reddan's. Whether they were ever connected or not, I don't know. But like that, the name has kind of disappeared over the years. Very few Reddans around, which is unusual in one sense.
There was a Don Reddan insurance agent. He was actually Don Reddan as well.
There was, insurance, I forgot about him now, But like that. But Claire, are there many Reddans around Tulla?
Not these days. They've pretty much disappeared. Last time I was in Ireland and then in Tulla, there weren't any Reddan families in the area then. So it's they've moved on and things.
There's a family in 6 Mile Bridge, I think, Reddans.
Yes, that's another branch of the family. I haven't connected them all up, but
in Killaloe there's Reddans as well. They have a pub. I know the family in Killaloe, Reddans, and like that. But like that, it's very scarce. You know, there's many. What other names, Nick, have you come across connected with the family, with your own family, of Irish origin?
Well, yeah, I know there is. I have some Barrett family from the up in Galway in the Ballinduff is
Barris, you said.
The parish is it Ardrahan. Ardrahan. But Ardrahan is pronounced here. Ardrahan. But Barrett, did you say the name Barrett? Barrett? Yeah, I would associate that now with West Limerick. Would you, Tom?
Yeah.
Around the Tay and Arden, that generally is full of Barretts.
Yeah. The Barrett family is still on the same townland as they were in the Griffith valuation. So it is interesting that they stayed in that area.
There's a thriving historical society in Tulla. Tony, you were involved there.
Well, I go out to Tulla, Nick. I go out to Tulla whenever they have lectures. They have a good, nice little historical society in Tulla.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, nothing has been happening here for 2 years now. But I hope they'll get back on their feet again. And I was inquiring now, just anybody ever hear of a Reddan in Tulla? Just on the off chance, you know. Not, I know you've tried, but sometimes you get a little skeleton in the cupboard.
Yeah.
I know somebody that his father was Reddan, but they didn't go as Reddans, which is a great one to hear, you know. You often get that or they might say, don't mention Reddan when you meet whoever he is or whoever she is. Don't say you know anything about Reddans, you know. That's just funny. And of course, I love doing it then. I'll bring it up in the subject, you know. It's funny enough. But like, another question about your Reddan families, right? Who would they pay? Do you know who they were paying rent to? They must have been paying it to somebody, you know, in Tulla, because the Browns controlled one part of Tulla. The Maloney's were other big landlords there. Molony. They tried to get away from the Irish spelling.
Yeah, look, I don't know who they rented off because I'm not sure. I mean, you really need to get to the Griffith valuation to find out
you do,
that sort of thing, or even and I haven't been able to tie down the right family, because obviously if they left in 1841 and the Griffith valuation is 1845, 1850, it's not no use to me in a sense.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that. So you do forget the span of time.
Yeah.
That it, you know, it's like looking for. I even know now in Ireland's history of Limerick, I often look for something in it, and I forget that wasn't built till 1870, and he finished off in 1865, published in 1866. So you forget sometimes it wouldn't be in it. You know, when you go looking for something.
But Don Reddan and his wife, at least they escaped the miseries of the famine, Nick. They escaped the miseries of the famine.
Well, they left really before it became a big issue, so they were lucky in that sense.
I suppose you'd wonder, had they any inkling of anything going to happen? You'd wonder, you know, like things were just so bad, I suppose.
Yeah. They're just looking for a better life, I think, and they did pretty well in Australia, so it was a good move for them.
Any correspondence home, Nick? Any letters?
Not that I have been able to find, no.
David Fitzpatrick did a great book. It was later, of course, Oceans of Consolation, the correspondence from Australia to Ireland, you know. But it was more later. Like I have letters from America in my family from the 1840s, but it was more unusual, you know. That time. Yeah.
I think they did keep in contact, because I know my great grandfather had a trip to Ireland sort of towards the end of his life. So
what year?
I'm not sure. I think it was the early 1920s, something like that. Yeah.
Is that Don Reddan's son?
Yeah.
Right.
His youngest son.
Yeah.
His youngest son, yeah. You'd wonder, like, what even from America, people that came back from America, relatives of the originals that left, like you like that the grandson of the grandfather, let's say. What did they expect, I wonder, here? You know, whether surprised, depressed, or what, you know, when they arrived here. You'd wonder.
Yeah, you wonder, and it's very hard to
it is. I often think that.
And who was your father then, Nick? Who was your father? In relation to Don, you've Don then and his youngest son. Like, where do you?
Yeah, so John Reddan had the son, Michael, called Michael Joseph Reddan, who was in Bundaberg. His son, my grandfather, was Sidney Vincent Reddan, and he, although his father was a store owner, he actually went to the agricultural college and had a farm in the sort of near Kingaroy in Queensland. And then my father, Doug Reddan,
what's his name?
Had a life there, and then came down to the city and was at times involved in the book trade, but most of the time he spent as a taxi driver.
Oh, did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Brisbane and grew up mostly in Brisbane, but my father, between when I was 2 and when I was 8, share farmed with his brother on the family farm at Geelong South.
Geelong.
Geelong.
Oh yeah, that's my wife's. My wife is from near Colac, south of Geelong.
No, not Geelong, but Geelong.
Oh yeah.
Good eye. It's amazing. Pronunciations. Even it's amazing pronunciations, local pronunciations, you know, that we have even in Ireland they're unreal, you know.
Yeah.
Do you say it as you see it, you know, or do you try to use it the local thing? It's like the city in California, San Jose. Have you heard of that city?
San Jose, yeah.
Should I say it like a Spaniard? Or Jose to me is Josie, you know. Josie Carreras, the opera singer, you know. But it's funny, pronunciations never cease to fascinate me, you know. Only yesterday I asked a girl about a lake we were talking about a lake in Peru, and I couldn't tell you what I called it now, but she had the proper, Lake Titicaca. Yeah, she was able to pronounce it perfectly in 2 seconds, where I couldn't get my tongue around it first, you know. But she was from Chile, and she could, but like that, local pronunciations. But it must have been fabulous for some of the names that went out to Australia. Not in the beginning, I'd say they were written as they were pronounced in the beginning. But then what about the 1870s, when you had a different administration who really wasn't interested in these Irish coming in with a name like Haughey or MacDonald, or, you know.
Yeah, look, names involved, and you've got to think that until sort of the mid 1800s, literacy was fairly low. So anything that was recorded would be recorded as said, rather than be written down. And then once people started writing their names, they sort of solidified their way of doing it. And of course, there were fashions about adding O's and not taking them off, and sometimes appropriately, sometimes not necessarily appropriately, but yeah.
And God only knows what happened with all the Macs.
Yeah.
You know, in Mac, should it be spelled as M-A-C or was it M-C? Is it as McConnell or should it be McMahon? So you'd wonder what way the British authorities were able to handle that.
Yeah, you see in the old newspapers, it's often M apostrophe whatever, rather than MC or MAC. So it's purely fashionable, and people change, I think, what they used to write down.
Oh yeah, well that happened a lot during what you call it, what's the word I'm looking for Protestantism? What's the word when they were proselytizing. When proselytizing happened, a lot of people changed the spelling. Like I said earlier on, Maloney in Tulla. To me, Moloney would be Maloney, but those Maloneys were Molony, just to get away from the riffraff, in other words, just to spell it a nicer way. A lot of them did that.
Yeah, people add S's, take out S's, add E's in places all over the place. And if you've got one of those names, you just got to look at all the different variants, because people did change the way that they spelt things. Some was deliberate, some was not so deliberate.
Yeah. Well,
have you come to a roadblock now, Nick, with your family? I think there's always hope, but do you think you've gone as far as you'll ever go?
I'm forever hopeful that I'll find something extra. In the last 5 or 6 years, I haven't found very much at all, but I keep plugging away, and sometimes things crop up. I mean, it took me quite a long time to find one of my other 3 times great grandfathers who worked in the customs house in Dublin. Although he lived in Dublin, and that he actually died in London, and is buried in Islington in London. So sometimes you can find something in quite an unexpected place.
Yeah. And was he your maternal line, or was he Reddan?
Yeah, he's my maternal line, the Croker family, which I've done a fair amount of work on.
Yeah.
Which Croker family? Which?
Well, it comes from originally they settled in sort of Waterford, Cork border area, and then the Ballinagard family in Limerick, which mine appear to come from them, and they ended up in Dublin around 1800. So he started working in the customs house in 1794.
Can I ask you a delicate question? Are your ancestors in the gentry list, or are they bar sinister? Are they?
Some of them are, some aren't. I mean, it's interesting that Thomas Swan Croker married as his second wife, I believe, one of the Wolf family, Anne Wolf, and she in the Wolf in the Burke's Irish families, he gets a mention there, but it gives him his not his correct father though is mentioned.
Oh yeah.
Because the Croker family were there's have you read what's his name, Caleb Powell, in his summing up of the Croker family, what he said about the Crokers? He said that one of them, I can't think which of them it is now, but he raised 6 blockheads sons, I think he says, or 7 of them, who spinned away the estate and ruined it. They seem to have, they were living off the estate. But it's funny to read what Caleb Powell says about them, when he's summing up the Croker family. He seems he didn't like them anyway, from what he wrote.
Well, yeah, I think they dissipated a bit in that second half of the 1800s. They lost a lot of the value of the estate.
Yeah. Because there was another branch of the Croker family down near, not far from Buttevant. I can't think now what it is this minute. But he acquired an estate. He married somebody locally and had a big estate, not far from Buttevant.
There's probably the Henry Croker, who's Major Henry Croker, who was at Quartertown.
Quartertown, that's it. Quartertown, exactly. That's it. It's what her name has it covered in her book. Anna Maria Hesba on her houses of North Cork. She's a fair bit in about Quartertown. That's what I read that about. He married in, and then he inherited a big estate there anyway. So I'd never heard of him till I read that.
Yeah, he was the grandfather of Richard Croker, who was called the Boss Croker from New York.
Yeah, Tammany Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah. He seemed to have been a nice man. Because my daughter brought me back a book from the States about Tammany Hall and about him, about Boss Croker, you know. He seems to have been a likable guy if you were well in with him, you know. But,
not so likable if you weren't, yes.
Yeah, there's one of the last of them lived out here in just in County Clare, near out in Blackwater. Out in Blackwater House, I think it was actually he lived in. He was very much involved in the race course. Crofton, he was Crofton Croker. There was he lived up to the 1940s, I think, or the 1950s. Fairly close to Limerick, but you're actually in Clare as you go out by what we call Corbally. You know, you're heading out to Outhouse Park Team. Anyway, he had a house there he had, which unfortunately all the remains now the outbuildings. But he was there very much involved in Limerick. And he seems to have been very popular from what I could gather with him, because I think he lived in sometime in the late 40s. He was about the last of them that was around. And although there's still the odd one that pops up. The name, I said it to a guy one time about his name. Where did he get the name? You know, and he said, my father says we're the other side of the blanket.
Yeah, there's a few of those around, I think.
We leave it at that, I said, you know. I didn't want to get into a hassle with him or his father, you know, because some people get very annoyed when they find out, you know.
I've had a few people contacting me now with connections with the Knight of Glyn and DNA. They never knew that they were connected, but it's through illegitimate line. And you know, the Knights of Glyn had mistresses, and now the people who are tracing their ancestors through DNA are coming up with the links, you know, and
the so-called DNA accidents.
Funny. Wouldn't you love that you were able to do DNA in everybody, you know, find out where they come from, you know. But one thing does puzzle me about DNA, not puzzle me, but I'm sure you've heard of the sack of Baltimore down in West Cork, where there were these pirates came in and reputed to have taken away, I think, about 200 residents from Baltimore. I think it was in 1630 or 16 something. Anyway, there's a book written actually on it. But what puzzled me is these people, when they were taken off to be sold in the Barbary Coast as well, slaves was a handy term. Yeah. What did they marry locally? Did they come back, or where did they go to? You know, had they offspring? Be fascinating to find out.
Well, you know, yeah, I'm sure some of them would have. So yeah, it depends. I mean, there's lots of intermingling and things like that. It's hard to. And DNA is very good for a few generations, but once you get back that far, it's hard to really decipher the signal from the noise.
I remember John de Courcy Ireland he wrote on naval matters, and I met him with Jim Kemmy one time, and he told me that there was a lot of interaction between Spain and Portugal and the coast of Kerry, and like, you know, I thought maybe it was the Spanish Armada. There's a lot of dark-colored people around Kerry, and he said like it's only natural that sailors came up, met local girls that probably didn't stay that long, but left their mark, for want of a better word. You know, there's still evidence there. Like, I mean, I was
sure,
and there was a guy. He was like being in Barcelona, or you know, he had all that the color, and I don't think it was the sun did it, as in the sun in the sky. So there has to be, some
But there has to be, yeah. But
yeah, there's quite a lot. I mean, there were a lot of Irish Catholics who left Ireland and worked as soldiers and things in various courts, including Spain and Portugal and Vienna, and there's quite a lot of work done by various people identifying those.
What are you doing now, Nick? Not right now, but what research are you doing? Any research at the moment, or
I mean, the Registry of Deeds Index project keeps me pretty busy.
Okay.
I try and do a little bit every now and again, and sort of look at my wife's family every now and again. But mostly,
And who's your wife's family?
yeah, what's her name? Yeah.
Well, she's mostly English, though she has some a couple Northern Ireland connections. She has some people from Ballymena in County Antrim and Cushendall and places like that in that general area. So
could you give the addresses of your websites for people who are listening in? Could you give the links, just give your links to the website? How would people get onto your website?
Well, if you just search for my name, you'll get my website. I have a birth brief, pedigree of me there, which summarizes what I know about various families.
Google Nick Reddan, yeah.
Yeah, and
Reddan, yeah.
Sorry.
Google Nick Reddan.
Just Nick,
just Google me and you'll find it.
Yeah.
You can just type in nickreddan.net without any space, and that will get my website up.
Oh, yeah. I'm just checking here. We're on nearly an hour anyway already. I forget. It's so early now in Australia in the morning.
Yeah, 7:30. It's not too bad, but it's 6:30 when we started. So
I didn't think anybody got up before 9 o'clock. Here, I mean, in Ireland.
They're avoiding the heat, Nick.
What's the weather like at the moment over?
I think today is going to be about 27, so not too hot. We had some 30s and that during the week, so it's warm here. Yeah, that's degrees C, not Fahrenheit.
Yeah. It's a pity that we can't kind of borrow the heat over here for a while, Which reminds me of something else now in doing research. What do you think of this global warming? The reason, I'm not being smart, the reason I'm asking you before you answer, Nick, is when you read back on what happened in Ireland, Lenihan in his history gives you these little notes of the weather at different times. And just two that come to mind, I think the 1798 September, he said that one reference, he says, the weather has been so hot this summer that there's a second growth of blossoms on the trees. And then the opposite to that, he says it is so cold. In 16 something, he says, it's so cold, it was so cold that you could walk the present day Arthur's Quay across Clancy Strand, where he refers to it as the North Strand. Look, the Shannon was frozen. So how is that? If we've global warming.
Well, it's there was a mini ice age in the 1700s. They had all those ice fairs on the Thames as well. When was the last time the Thames froze over? When in 1978-9 winter, I was actually living in Kent, and the Medway River froze over, only about an inch thick, but that was the first time in living memory that had happened, and that was 1979. I don't think it's happened since. But yeah, global warming is certainly happening, and but there are other variations around as well. And the mini ice age is well documented. There are other things, but the trend has certainly been getting warmer in the last few years.
Is it getting warmer here, is it? You know, I wouldn't mind a little bit of heat now this time of the year. That could be handy, you know.
I mean, in December, my neighbours are cutting their lawns. The grass has been cut all year round now here. So after October, you wouldn't cut grass in Ireland, but now people are cutting it because there's extra growth there, you know.
That's my wife about it, you know. A dreadful thing to have to cut grass. Really dreadful. I think you better have to get a goat. You get the loan of a goat, leave him out for a week, and then give him back, you know. Or could we, is there any chance we could borrow the hole in the ozone layer in Ireland? We could borrow it for the month of July and kind of give it back as soon as, you know, it'd be kind of handy. Anyway, look, it's hard to believe we're talking to you now in Canberra. You know, and you think of all the Irish that went out. I mean, the distance, it's 4 months on a ship. You know, it's really, really hard. And even a plane for that matter, you know, 11 hours from Singapore to Melbourne. It's unreal. And to think you could communications now, you can talk to somebody, you know, in a matter of minutes. It's fascinating, this.
Well, it was certainly in the communication age, but it's changed in our lifetime a hell of a lot.
Yes,
I mean,
yeah.
I can remember the first time I came to England. You had to, if you wanted to ring someone on Christmas Day, you had to book a 3-minute slot, and that was just to talk on the telephone.
And pay through the nose for it.
Yeah, pay through the nose for it. And now people ring up and video call from the other side of the world, and it costs nothing.
Nothing. It's really hard to believe, you know, that you can send text messages and like that Zoom calls. It's fascinating, really. You can't believe that the person, it's hard to believe, even for older people, that you are in Canberra, the other side of Australia, really, you know, and to be able to talk to us live at this time of the day. I don't know.
When I got married, my wife faxed a plan of our house to her father. And I explained to my father the concept of a fax. And he said, you put a piece of paper here into a machine, and it comes out in Australia. So, like, you understand that you put a piece of paper in here, and it came out in Australia instantly. You know, he like.
It's really hard to believe, you know. And even the fax machine now was complete.
Oh yeah.
Stupid, you know, crazy.
When I started
fax? What about a telex machine?
Yeah.
When was the last time I saw a telex machine?
You know, and people used to put telex down on business forms, you know, telex numbers were down. All that knows.
Watching the news in the 70s, especially during an election, and you see the telex machine popping up the paper, you know, with the results. Yeah. You know, it was just
fascinating. Anyway, Nick, thank you for coming on, and we'd have to get in touch. I was talking to Mr. Warden last night, and he wanted to know, was this live? And I said no. So he said, how soon will it be up? It will be up on the Limerick Historical Society website anyway. It's in a couple of days, you know. And they don't trust me here. They want to edit. They want to make sure that they edit it properly, you know, in case there was anything bad said, you know, as if I do that, you know. Anyway, Nick Reddan, can we thank you, Nick, for coming on, and we'll talk again, sure. God only knows when, you know.
Yeah, look, that's fine. No problem.
Especially if you're coming to Ireland, we'll talk to you anyway.
If we hear of any Reddans in Tulla, we'll let you know.
Oh,
okay, that'll be good.
I'll quiz them around now when I get out there, just to see. And yeah, the obvious I said earlier on, the thing will be probably no. But then somebody might say that they knew something. Or have you tried the graveyard in Tulla? Did you ever go to the old?
I have looked there. There are purportedly some Reddans there, but nothing that I can associate.
That's not that big. It's easy to read the headstones in that graveyard. I was at a funeral there 2 years ago of Pat Thorpe, who was kind of looking after the Historical Society, but he's dead now, and like that information has gone with him as well. But anyway, we'll go.
There is there is a lady in Tulla that's Halloran, Jane Halloran, who does the Tulla Facebook page for
what's her name?
Jane Halloran, I think.
Yeah, I think I have somebody in mind now. I have as a person. I don't know her name, but because the girl Geraldine Toohey is what I know out there. I know most of them out there. It's just names I'm not that familiar with, But I'll check that out, There is a fella here in Limerick, we know, that we call him the Tulla Cowboy, and he's well known in Limerick now. And it's funny name for a fella like the Tulla Cowboy, Anyway, Nick, again, thanks very much for coming on. And again, thanks to Tom as well, And we'll talk, God only knows, if I can get this little mouse now to work, I'll be grand. Anyway, Nick, we'll talk again, okay? Thanks very much.
Okay.
Look, Joe.
Thanks. See you another time.
See you, Tom.